My name is Nikki and I'm a health and wellness coach. And today we're going to be talking about why the heck there are so many different types of stretches. We're going to be diving into what each one is about, which each one it incorporates, and which one's appropriate for you. There's a lot of information that can be confusing out there, and hopefully today we're going to clear some of that up for you. So let's get to it. So first of all, let's talk about why stretching is important for you. Stretching equals flexibility, and flexibility directly translates into your range of motion. Your range of motion is important because you're going to either set yourself up for success or you're going to set yourself up for failure. So when you have tight muscles, it's going to pull your joints out of alignment. And so if you try to, let's say, increase the weight on your back squat, or increase the distance you run within so much time, if you're pushing yourself, there's more of a chance that you're going to create the shearing forces that tight muscles will cause on your joints, and because you're out of alignment, and so the pressure, your center of gravity isn't correct, your alignment's not correct, and so there is a much higher risk for you to actually injure yourself. So that, essentially in a nutshell, is why stretching is so important and why you should stay on top of that. So, the 6 different types of stretches we're going to talk about today is first the type of stretching that we're all familiar with, which is called static stretching. Then we're going to talk about activated isolated stretches, which is also known as AIS. Then we're going to talk about proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitated stretching. Easier way to say that, PNF stretching. Then we're also going to be talking about myofascial release, which is a relatively new type of stretching. And we'll get into the details of that in a moment here. And then also there is our dynamic stretching and our ballistic stretching. All right, so first up on the list is static stretching, which is the most common one that we know about, as we were just saying. And so what static stretching is you take a targeted muscle group, so say your hamstrings or your quads or whatever it might be, and you pull that muscle group, so say it's our hamstrings, we're gonna lie on our back and we're going to pull that muscle group, straighten our leg out until our muscle feels a point of tension. Never pain, but just tension, and we're gonna hold it there between 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on your tolerance level. So it is cut out for people who are less flexible to those who are very flexible. So it's for any range of people, and you can do it pre-exercise or post. But however, there is research that is coming out that shows that it is actually better to hold off on your static stretches until your post-exercise. And the reason being is because if you try to do static stretches before you work out, there's more of a chance for injuring that muscle because those muscles aren't warmed up yet. There's no blood flowing to them. There's also evidence showing that when you do static stretching, it restricts the blood flow to those targeted muscle groups. And you're lengthening that muscle, which actually will decrease your strength and muscle contraction when you're trying to work out. So there's actually evidence showing that it's better to wait until post-workout to do your static stretching. Next up on the list is activated isolated stretching, or AIS, which is where you can take a stretching rope, or you don't have to use one, you can just use your hands if you're trying to stretch out your hamstrings, but you take, in the same way that you do with static stretches, so we'll use your hamstrings again as an example. You take your target muscle group and you take it to the point of resistance, and instead of holding it there like static stretching, what you do is you hold it there for 2 seconds, and then in a controlled movement you let your leg back down. And then what you want to do is you bring it right back up, but this time what you want to do is bring it just a little bit past that point that you were at before. Again, hold it only for 2 seconds, and then let your leg down in a controlled fashion. You can do this with your neck, you can do this with your arms, any part of your body. So the point is you're gonna repeat this for about 10 to 15 times, and each time you're trying to go a little bit further with that stretch. All right, next up on the list is myofascial release, which has to do with a connective tissue type mesh that surrounds all of our muscles and holds them together essentially. The theory behind myofascial release is you take a specific targeted area, you take a ball or you can take foam rollers, and so you're applying pressure to a point of tension that you might have if you have any knots or anything like that, or tightness, and you take a 2-inch to 6-inch area and you just put that pinpoint pressure and roll back and forth around 30 seconds to a minute, and it's going to depend on who you are and your pain tolerance level. And so it's thought to help kind of loosen that fascia and help to increase range of motion and decrease the tension that you're having. And myofascial release is good for not very flexible people all the way up to very flexible, pros. And so it can be used at any level, and it's recommended pre-workout and post-workout. So dynamic stretching is where you are mimicking activities that you're planning on doing in your upcoming workout. So for instance, if you see someone doing exaggerated lunges, before they sprint, or butt kicks or knee raises, that's an example of dynamic stretching where you're essentially waking up those muscles, the muscle groups that you're planning on using. This activity, this type of stretch, is reserved for people who are more conditioned, and they use it in pre-exercise, like we were just talking about. You're waking up the muscles that you're planning on using in your following workout. Ballistic stretching is reserved for very athletic people and with very good flexibility. And the reason being is because what you're doing is you're using momentum to force a limb beyond its range of motion. So for instance, if you've seen, an example would be a runner who is bouncing to touch their toes, or let's say a tennis player who is swinging their arm through the range of motion that they would normally use with full force. So this is why this is reserved for highly athletic, very flexible people, is because if you're inexperienced and you lack range of motion, there is a much higher risk for hurting yourself when you're trying to do ballistic stretching. Ballistic stretching is before, so pre-exercise, and also can be used post-exercise. All right, so last but not least is proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. Easier way to say it is PNF stretching. So what you do with this, it's also known as the stretch, contract, relax method. You want your muscles to be really nice and warmed up, so this is reserved for post-workout stretching. And this is where you are going to take, for instance, let's say your hamstrings, where you're lying on your back. You're going to take a stretching rope, and you are going to go ahead and pull your leg to a point of tension, and you're going to hold it there for about 15 seconds. Then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to push against the direction that you're actually trying to go. So you're going to hold nice and tight onto that rope, and then you're going to contract. Essentially, you're contracting your quadricep, pushing in the opposite direction that you're trying to go for a period of around 8 seconds. What this is doing, the theory behind this, or what research shows, is that when you contract a muscle group, what your body will actually do is your reciprocal muscle will actually end up relaxing. So then after you have contracted your quads and pushed against your stretching rope for around 8 seconds, then you're going to go ahead and relax your leg again. And this time you're going to sit there for around 30 seconds, and you're going to continue to stretch your hamstring towards you, and what you'll see is you can actually go a few degrees further than what you were at. So this is what you want to do, is continue to repeat this for another 4 to 5 times. All right, that was our quick overview of the different stretches and what's right for you. I really hope this helped. If it did, don't hesitate to ask me any questions, subscribe to follow along so you can stay up to date with the latest science-backed tips and tricks. And we will be talking to you soon. Bye.